Why do some people walk into a room and own it, without saying a word? Why is it that one person's silence feels like thunder, while another's noise fades like a whisper? It's not height, not wealth, not even charisma. It's something deeper, something you feel before they even speak. It's presence. But where does presence come from? It's not gifted. It's not inherited. It's built. And at the core of that presence is a trait so rare, so misunderstood, that most people spend their entire lives chasing everything else, never realizing this was the missing piece. Confidence, not the loud kind, not the boastful, self-centered, insecure performance that pretends to be strength, but the true kind. The kind that needs no audience, the kind that never begs to be seen, the kind that Machiavelli understood, wrote about, and lived by. See, the most powerful trait of the truly confident isn't arrogance. It's not dominance. It's not even fearlessness. It's this, the ability to hold your ground without explanation. True confidence is quiet. It's still. It's surgical. It knows when to speak and when to say nothing. It understands that the more you explain yourself, the more permission you give others to doubt you. In a world that's addicted to validation, desperate for attention, and allergic to silence, this kind of power is almost alien. But that's why it works. The person who can stay composed when others panic, who doesn't flinch when tested, who can walk away without needing to prove anything, that's the person we remember. That's the person we respect. And Machiavelli knew it long before Instagram taught us how to pose for power. He once wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both." But behind that line is something deeper. It is better to be respected than to be liked, because respect lasts longer. True confidence doesn't dance for applause. It doesn't explain its decisions to win favor. It doesn't apologize for existing. And yet, it is the most rare trait in today's world. We've built a society where overthinking is praised and silence is seen as weakness, where people defend themselves before they're even attacked, where insecurity wears the mask of extroversion, and where true power, the kind that doesn't need validation, has become invisible. But here's the truth. The person who can master this trait doesn't just stand out. They become untouchable, because when you stop needing to be understood, you become impossible to manipulate. This is not about indifference. It's not apathy. It's not about shutting yourself off or walking through life cold and detached. It's about ownership of your mind, your emotions, your energy. It's about knowing that you don't have to chase anything to prove your worth. Because when you know who you are, nothing outside of you can shake it. And that is the heart of what Machiavelli understood. Confidence is not in how loudly you speak, but in how little you need to say. So in the next 30 minutes, we'll uncover what this trait really looks like. Not in theory, but in action. You'll understand how the quiet strength of true confidence shapes perception, commands authority, and frees you from the exhausting game of performance. We'll explore its roots in ancient philosophy, how it works psychologically, how to practice it daily, and what happens when you finally stop needing to explain yourself to anyone. But before we begin, let me ask you something. When was the last time you felt the need to explain yourself and immediately regretted it? When was the last time you knew you were right, but still chased someone's approval just to feel safe? Think about that moment. Now imagine if you hadn't. Imagine if you had simply paused, breathed, said nothing, not out of fear, but out of power. That's the feeling we're chasing here, not dominance, not detachment, but control, not over others, but over yourself. This is the power of presence. This is the most powerful trait of the truly confident, and it's time you made it your own. Let's begin. Welcome to Psychra. Centuries ago, during the turbulent political storms of Renaissance Italy, one man stood above the noise, not with an army, not with wealth, but with observation. Niccolò Machiavelli, a thinker, a diplomat, and above all, a realist. He didn't romanticize power, he dissected it. In his masterpiece, The Prince, Machiavelli laid bare a truth that most people still deny. Men judge more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see, few can feel. In other words, perception rules reality, and those who can control how they are perceived, without ever losing control of themselves, rule everything else. Machiavelli's world was one of betrayal, ambition, chaos. And in that arena, strength wasn't brute force. It was strategy. The ability to remain composed when others lost their heads, to speak when words would crush, and remain silent when silence would sting even deeper. He understood that in the theater of power, the most commanding figure is the one who needs the least from others. That's where true confidence lives. Not in flamboyance, not in overcorrection, but in restraint. Machiavelli didn't believe in kindness for its own sake. He believed in effectiveness. He believed in calculating every move, what you reveal, what you withhold, and how much control you give away through emotional reaction. And in his eyes, the most dangerous person in the room was not the loudest. It was the one you couldn't read, the one who didn't need to convince you of anything, because that person could never be predicted or controlled. Fast forward to today. Look around at the world we live in. A world where everyone is told to speak louder, market harder, post more, explain everything, where silence is feared. Stillness is mistaken for weakness, and those who do not perform their lives online are seen as either arrogant or invisible. But the truth Machiavelli saw 500 years ago hasn't changed. Power flows to those who control perception, and perception begins with how you carry yourself, especially when you say nothing at all. Think of the greats. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, a man who wielded absolute power and yet rarely boasted. Barack Obama, who mastered the pause as a rhetorical weapon. Or even someone in your personal life, a mentor, a colleague, a stranger, who walked into a space and instantly commanded attention without even trying. What did they have? Not noise, not volume, not a desperate need to be accepted. They had poise. They had certainty without explanation. And whether they read Machiavelli or not, they lived by one of his core teachings. A wise man does at once what a fool does at last. Meaning they act from clarity, not emotion. They speak only when it matters. They never hand their power away by defending what doesn't need defending. Think of confidence like the eye of a storm. Still, centered, immovable. All around it, chaos rages, noise, insecurity, performance. But at the center is clarity, calm, silence. That's the trait we're talking about. Not indifference, not avoidance, but presence, rooted so deeply in self-understanding that no opinion can shake it. That is the trait Machiavelli admired. That is the trait the world follows, even when it doesn't understand why. And this isn't limited to the powerful or famous. You can see it in a teenager who doesn't follow the crowd and still holds their head high, in a parent who doesn't explain their boundaries but enforces them with dignity, in a friend who listens more than they speak, and still ends up the one everyone turns to for advice. There's a reason for that. We trust what doesn't try too hard. We follow what feels grounded. We gravitate toward what doesn't need us to approve of it, because deep down, we all crave stability. And in a world that's constantly trying to prove itself, the one who doesn't becomes the anchor. That's the Machiavellian understanding of confidence. Not a weapon, not a performance, but a state of self-possession so firm, so silent, that even your enemies have to respect it. And here's the beautiful irony. The less you chase approval, the more people give it. The less you explain, the more people lean in. The less you react, the more powerful your presence becomes. Confidence is not a show. It's a discipline. It's the art of knowing what not to say, when not to move, and how to stand so still. The world can't help but notice. Because in the words of Machiavelli, everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. So make your appearance count, and let your silence do the rest. Confidence isn't just a feeling, it's a signal. And that signal is constantly broadcasting to the people around you, even when you're silent. Especially when you're silent. We live in a psychological ecosystem where people are constantly reading each other, judging, interpreting, assigning value. And most of it happens unconsciously. It's not about what you say. It's about how you carry the unsaid. That's why the truly confident don't rush to fill silence. They don't explain their every move. They don't react instantly because they understand something most people miss. The moment you become reactive, you've handed over control. Psychologically, we're wired to interpret calm as competence. It's a primal reflex. When someone stays still while others panic, our brains tag them as powerful. When someone waits before responding, we assume they're calculating, not unsure, but discerning. That's why a single pause can shift an entire interaction. Imagine you're in an argument. The other person is raising their voice, repeating their point, waiting for a reaction. But you don't bite. You don't defend. You simply look at them, not with arrogance, not with anger, but with unreadable calm. Suddenly, the energy shifts. They're no longer in control, because their outburst is bouncing off a wall of composure. And that, right there, is psychological power. People are addicted to predictability. When you react like everyone else, defend, explain, justify, they know how to handle you. But when you respond like no one else, by holding your ground, saying less, pausing more, you become a puzzle. And the human mind hates puzzles it can't solve. That's where your advantage is. We're trained to believe confidence is visible through words, posture, charm. But the deepest form of confidence is invisible. It's what happens when you no longer need to prove anything. When you let others underestimate you and you don't correct them. When you know your value so thoroughly, no insult touches it and no compliment inflates it. Let me tell you a story. A few years ago, I was sitting in a boardroom with senior executives. The meeting was tense. Budgets, politics, egos, all colliding in real time. One person, in particular, kept challenging my ideas over and over. They were loud, confident, trying to dominate the room. Now, everything in me wanted to defend myself, to match their energy, to prove I was right. But I didn't. I looked at them, listened, and waited. When they finished, I asked a single question, calm, precise, and pointed. Suddenly, the room turned. Because in my restraint, I didn't lose power, I claimed it. That day, I didn't win with facts. I won with presence. You see, confidence isn't about controlling others. It's about controlling yourself so completely that others adjust to your frequency. And this is where psychology plays a game of mirrors. When you radiate calm, others become conscious of their chaos. When you hold your ground, others feel the instability of theirs. When you speak with weight, others feel the lightness of their own words. It's not dominance, it's gravitational pull. But let's be real, it's not easy. Most people are afraid of silence. We fear being misunderstood. We fear being ignored. We fear being labeled as cold or distant. So we speak more than we should. We over-explain, we defend, we beg to be seen. But every time you do that, you teach the world to question your value. Every time you explain yourself to someone who's not listening, you dilute your worth. Every time you try to convince someone of your competence, you suggest you don't believe in it yourself. Confidence, real confidence, walks in silence. It lets others project whatever they want because it knows the truth isn't up for negotiation. Think about it. Have you ever been around someone who just felt unshakable, who didn't need to say much, but you knew? They knew who they were? That feeling? That pull? That's what we all respond to. It's why silence in the right moment can be louder than any speech. Why stillness in the face of chaos creates awe. Why the one who says less is remembered more. So here's your mirror. When was the last time you held your silence when it mattered? When was the last time you didn't chase validation and instead let people come to their own conclusions? Let that be your test. And if you're willing, share your answer in the comments, because your experience might just become someone else's breakthrough. Confidence isn't a show. It's not a costume. It's a way of being. And when you wear it properly, It becomes your shield, your signature, and your silent language. Power, when refined, becomes a way of moving through the world. Confidence, when mastered, becomes a quiet language only the disciplined understand. But here's the good news. It's not magic, it's muscle. And like any muscle, it can be trained. Let's strip it all down and ask the question that matters. How do you practice this kind of unshakable confidence in your everyday life? Let me give you a few real-world scenarios, ones you're likely to face, and how to apply Machiavellian poise in each of them. These aren't just theories, they're battle-tested. 1. The argument trap. Don't react, reframe. You're in a heated moment. A colleague challenges your ideas in front of others. Your ego wants to fire back instantly, but instead, you pause, not to avoid conflict, but to own it. That pause, that 3-second silence before responding, that's the moment where confidence breathes. Then you reply, not defensively, not emotionally, but with a question. Something like, what exactly do you think won't work? Now they have to clarify. They're on the defensive. You've shifted the power dynamic with a single breath. Practice this, not just in work, in arguments with friends, family, even strangers online. Less defense, more direction. You're not here to explain your worth. You're here to direct the conversation with calm precision. 2. The online game. Don't engage, observe. Social media thrives on noise. The louder, the better. But you're not here to compete with chaos. You're here to own the signal. Someone comments something critical under your post. Everyone watches to see if you'll clap back. You don't. Instead, you let it sit. You might like the comment or pin it, but you don't react. You let others react to it for you. Suddenly, you're not defending yourself. You're curating perception. Powerful people understand this. Silence online isn't weakness. It's strategy. The moment you stop trying to win every exchange is the moment you start commanding attention without chasing it. 3. The relationship storm. Don't prove, hold space. In relationships, romantic, familial, or friendships, the pressure to prove ourselves is constant. We want to be understood. We want to be seen. We want to be right. But imagine this. In the middle of a fight, the other person is throwing words like daggers. Instead of matching their fire, you go still, you listen. Not to agree, not to argue, but to witness. Then you say one thing, just one sentence, calm, honest. Director, I hear you. Let me sit with this before I respond. Do you know what that does? It turns emotional chaos into psychological clarity. It tells the other person, I'm not here to win, I'm here to lead. That's Machiavellian confidence, not manipulation, but mastery of self. 4. The everyday presence. Move slower, speak less. This might sound strange, but one of the fastest ways to build internal power is to move slower. Walk slower, speak with measured rhythm, pause between sentences. Let silence decorate your words. We're used to racing through life, talking fast, moving fast, trying to get ahead. But speed screams insecurity, slowness whispers certainty. When you walk into a room and don't rush to speak, people lean in. When you don't interrupt, people assume your words will matter. And when you do speak, each word lands with weight. Try this. The next time you're in a group, resist the urge to fill the silence. Instead, let it stretch. Let others scramble to fill it. And when you speak, make every word count. 5. Texting and messaging. Delay as power. This one is small, but massive. The way you respond to messages trains people how to treat you. If you always reply within seconds, you teach others that your time is cheap. If you delay, not out of arrogance, but intention, you tell the world you are focused, selective, and not always available. Don't be a slave to your phone. Confidence means you choose when to respond, not react on demand. These aren't just tactics, they're trainings, ways to rewire your reflexes. You don't need to be perfect, you just need to be consistent. Small moments of silence, deliberate movement, a pause instead of a reaction. All of these build toward something greater. Command presence. Think of it like weightlifting. You won't feel stronger after one rep, but do it every day, and you'll walk differently, speak differently, feel differently. Now here's a challenge. Pick one of these practices and apply it this week. Which one speaks to you most right now? Is it the pause during arguments, the slower walk, the controlled silence in messaging? Whatever it is, own it, practice it, refine it. And if you're willing, let me know in the comments what you're choosing. Not because I need validation, but because declaring it makes it real. Confidence doesn't come all at once. It's built one controlled moment at a time. One breath, one pause, one powerful silence. Let's be honest. This kind of confidence, the kind that moves quietly but shakes the room, is not easy. It looks effortless, but it demands everything. Discipline, restraint, patience. 3 words that sound simple until you're tested. And trust me, you will be tested. The world isn't built to reward silence. It doesn't hand out trophies for the ones who stay calm in chaos. It celebrates volume, outrage, immediacy. So when you decide to live with Machiavellian composure, you are going against the current. And that's the first challenge. You'll feel invisible. You'll bite your tongue in a room full of shouting. You'll choose not to reply to the jab online. You'll hold back when you know you could dominate the argument. And no one will clap for you. No one will say, "Good job staying calm." They might even see your silence as weakness, and that's where most people fall apart, because we've been conditioned to associate visibility with value. If I'm not loud, if I'm not reacting, if I'm not proving myself, am I even here? But here's the brutal truth. The moment you need to be seen, you've already lost control. I know this personally. There was a time in my life when I needed approval. Every message I sent, I watched for a reply. Every meeting I entered, I over-explained. Every silence felt like a threat. But the more I tried to be seen, the more invisible I became. Until one day, I stopped. I let people talk over me. I let the room move without me, and I focused on presence, not performance. Something strange happened. People leaned in. They asked what I thought. Not because I demanded attention, but because I withheld it. I learned that silence, when intentional, isn't absence. It's pressure. It creates a vacuum others feel compelled to fill. But that brings us to the second challenge. You'll feel misunderstood. People will assume you're cold, or arrogant, or uninterested. You're not. You're focused, you're deliberate, you're protecting your power. But don't expect others to understand that right away. They're used to noise. You're offering them depth. And depth takes time to be recognized. You'll want to explain yourself. Don't. You'll want to justify your silence. Resist. Because the moment you start explaining your calm, you've already fractured it. Let them misunderstand you. That's part of the strength. Because here's what happens when you don't explain. They wonder. They rethink. They project power onto you that you didn't even claim. That's the Machiavellian secret. Let perception work in your favor, not against your control. But even after that, there's still the final and hardest challenge. You'll doubt yourself. You'll wonder if you're doing the right thing. If all this restraint, all this inner discipline, is even working. Because progress in this game is invisible. There's no scoreboard, no applause, no metrics. And that's exactly why most people quit. They can't see what they're building. But you're building something bigger than approval. You're building sovereignty, not dominance over others, control over yourself. Because here's what you gain. Once you push past those early tests, you walk into any room and you don't need to prove anything. You're calm, not because nothing shakes you, but because you choose what deserves your energy. You become the kind of person others watch before they speak. You influence conversations without raising your voice. You command respect without asking for it. That's not arrogance. That's alignment. You don't seek permission. You set the tone. And slowly, the world adapts to your rhythm. That's when it all clicks. You realize this trait, the powerful restraint, the elegant control, the silence that speaks louder than shouts, isn't just a hack. It's a way of life. One built not on loud moments, but 1,000 small, quiet choices. So if you're in that phase right now, where it's hard, where it feels thankless. Remember this. The seeds you're planting in silence will bloom in power. And not just temporary power, not applause, not approval, but real, unshakable confidence. Confidence that no insult can shake, no absence can dissolve, no loss can erase, because it wasn't borrowed, it was built. So let me ask you, what's the hardest part for you right now? Is it staying calm when misunderstood? Is it resisting the urge to explain? Is it doubting yourself in the silence? Whatever it is, name it, own it, and face it with poise. Because every storm you pass through quietly builds the stillness that others will feel from miles away. Now take a breath, feel your power, and keep going. Let's bring everything into sharp focus. What we've been talking about isn't just a strategy, it's a transformation. Not a mask you wear, but a truth you embody. Because the most powerful trait of the truly confident isn't charm, dominance, or control. It's restraint, composure, a quiet, deliberate mastery over self. And this, Machiavelli knew centuries ago. He understood that real power doesn't shout. It doesn't clamor for validation. It moves in silence, it waits patiently, and it strikes only when necessary. Confidence, in its highest form, is subtle. It's not the loudest voice in the room. It's the one that speaks last and says the most with the least. You've seen this in leaders who command a room with stillness. You've seen it in individuals who walk into chaos and never flinch. You've felt it when someone looks at you with calm certainty, and suddenly, all your noise quiets down. That's the presence we're talking about. It's not apathy, it's not coldness, it's not indifference, it's precision. It's choosing not to waste energy. It's knowing that the person who doesn't react is the one who owns the frame. So what do you do with this? You start small. You don't need a grand transformation overnight. You need one pause, one silence, one moment where you resist the old urge to explain, to defend, to prove. That moment becomes a habit. That habit becomes your standard, and that standard becomes your identity. Start with one practice today. Pause before you speak. Whether it's a text, a comment, an argument, a presentation, pause. Let the silence work for you. It's not about hesitation. It's about anchoring yourself before you give away your energy. And when the urge rises, to fill space, to chase approval, to jump into the noise, remember this. The most magnetic people are the ones who make stillness feel like strength. They don't just move differently. They exist differently. They've made peace with not being understood immediately. They've made power out of being underestimated. They've made their silence say more than words ever could. That's your challenge. That's your edge, and that's your liberation. You don't have to perform. You don't have to chase. You don't have to react. You just have to hold. Hold your ground. Hold your power. Hold your frame. And over time, people will feel it. They won't know what changed, but they'll sense it. They'll respond to it, and they'll respect it. So here's what I want from you. In the comments, tell me this. What's one area of your life where you'll start practicing this kind of confidence? Is it your job, your relationship, your online presence? Write it down. Claim it. Make it real. And if this message hit you deeply, share it. Because the world doesn't need more noise. It needs more people who understand when to stay still. If you want to keep sharpening your edge, keep exploring ideas like this and dive deeper into power, discipline, self-mastery. Welcome to Psychra. This is where we dissect the timeless truths that transform ordinary lives into sovereign ones. And if you haven't already, subscribe. Because every week, we go deeper into the psychology of the few who rise above the chaos. You don't need the world to understand you. You just need to understand yourself. And when you do, when you really know who you are and how to hold your power, you'll stop chasing light. Because you'll realize you were the fire all along. Until next time, stay still, stay sharp, stay sovereign.